Hello everyone, welcome to Asura Psych, and last week I talked about the introverted NI-FI loop of the INTJ. And a lot of people asked in the comment section if I could explain some of the loops for the extroverted types and how those work compared to looping with like the INTJ or other introverted types. And I didn't want to do a video on all 16 types and their loop because I think the general principle within the looping is the same. So I think I'm just going to discuss a little bit about how extroverted function loops work today and discuss how maybe someone could get out of one of these loops. Let's get into it. So what exactly is an extroverted function loop? Well, an extroverted function loop works pretty much the same way that an introverted function does. The dominant and tertiary functions, which are in the same attitude, either extroverted or introverted, are going to be working together in a way that is negative because it's not allowing positive impact or input from the functions that are in the opposite attitude. So for the extroverted types, this is essentially saying that they're going to be employing both extroverted functions without allowing the introverted functions to have say or input. And this is negative because you're not having a complete view of the issue that you're going to be approaching if you're not allowing yourself to have that subjective input as well, if you're only engaging in the double extroverted, double objective standpoint related to the problem that you're facing. Loops don't necessarily have to be related to a problem though. So for example, someone who's stuck in a double extroverted loop could have that as being kind of like almost most of their personality because they're stuck in this loop and it's just become their regular way of living. So it's not that they have a singular problem that's put them into a loop, it's more so that this loop has developed into something over time that's more continuous, and that if they don't get out of it, it's going to be a continuous problem that's going to affect more than one single situation. So it's important to recognize your own personality type and how it might fall into some sort of personality or function loop, because if you get stuck in this loop, it can become continuous and evolve into something that might become a pattern in your personality, and that's not something you typically want to happen. So how does an extroverted loop differ from an introverted loop? Well, an introverted loop is usually characterized by some form of indecisiveness when it comes to impacting the outer world, which is to say that usually introverted types, when they're in their introverted loop, will be kind of stuck within themselves and not willing to act upon either the perceptions or judgments that they are debating with themselves within about. So the extroverted types are usually going to be on the other side of the spectrum, where you're going to find that they're going to be too spontaneous at times. They're going to be too willing to act on these decisions that they have, or these perceptions that they have, and they might even be way too spontaneous in their decision-making process. You'll often find that extroverted types will try to distract themselves with things in the outer world and kind of avoid the idea of going within to deal with their problems, which is to say that they'll find something, if they're an extroverted perceiving type, that's interesting to them or that can distract them, and they'll get involved in that instead of retreating withinward to kind of deal with the situation that they're facing and really think about it. And the extroverted judging types might start to organize their external world or organize their life in a way as much as they can so they can avoid the problem that needs to be dealt with within. So what are some healthy ways for an extroverted type who's stuck in a loop to get out of their extroverted loop and retreat inward? Because it's not like with the introverted types where it's an easy answer to say, well, oh, you can just kind of go out and do something in the outer world and engage with other people, and that'll get you at least a little bit in the extroverted world. With the extroverted types, you have to think, well, how can I retreat inward in a healthy manner and do something productive with this? Well, I find that a lot of extroverted types will try to employ things along the lines of journaling or note-keeping as a form to kind of retreat inward, because when you engage in the process of journaling, you're essentially forcing yourself into introversion. You're asking yourself, how do I feel about this situation? How do I think about this situation? And either of these are either going to employ introverted feeling or introverted thinking, which is going to be productive for allowing yourself to get into that introverted mindset, even if only temporarily, and have a little bit more of a balanced mindset related to the issues that you're facing. Because if you ask, how do I feel about this specific thing, and you're not immediately acting upon it or trying to make some outer decision about this thing, then you're going to be able to allow yourself to have that subjective input, and your psyche is going to feel a little bit better about the overall situation. So when it comes to the introverted perceiving functions, on the other hand, it's important for extroverted types to stop and think when presented with new information. And I know this sounds like a simple answer, but that's really the only kind of way to engage in that introverted perceiving function in a meaningful way. Because introverted perceiving is when you stop and say, hey, let me process this internally. Let me feel out what this situation is going to be like. How is this going to impact me? How is this going to impact those I care about? And really allow yourself to gather the information associated with the situation that you're in. So if you're an extroverted type, you just have to stop And before you make any sort of decision or before you jump right into what it is that you're doing, allow yourself time to process information. Now, I think that this one is a little bit harder to engage with than the introverted judging function, which can be engaged a little bit more actively because the introverted perceiving functions are a little bit more spontaneous in nature in that you can't really actively engage them in the same way. So I think it's important maybe to just try and slow down when presented with new information. Now, there are ways I think that you can engage introverted perceiving other than just stopping to slow down when presented with new information. Alongside the idea of journaling, you could maybe do some art interpretation where you're trying to find meaning in pictures when you look at art, something along those lines, and engage in what these things mean to you, essentially. What is being produced in your mind when you are looking at art or something related to that, maybe even a TV show or a movie interpretation of some kind. These things can also engage the introverted perceiving function. So overall, the extroverted types, if they want to get out of a function loop, they need to stop, they need to slow down, they need to process information in some way, whether it's note-taking, journaling, art interpretation, something along those lines where they're going to be engaging in those introverted functions and allowing themselves to process things internally. Once they allow themselves to stop and process, then they can get a more holistic view of the situation that they're facing and their life in general. And that's going to be healthier for the psyche overall. And that's why I think it's important for all types to make sure they're not stuck in some sort of double introverted or double extroverted loop, because that's not going to be good for the decision-making process. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you're an extroverted type and you've had situations or experiences related to being in a loop, please let me know down in the comment section below how you dealt with it, or if you have any advice for other extroverted types who might be struggling in the same way. I would like to remind everybody that I do have personality typing sessions available at my website, asurapsych.com, if you're interested in working with me to find out what your personality type is and what that means for you. This has been Asura at Asura Psych. Have a good one.